Remove carcinogens and get your gear compliant clean with Unimac laundry equipment. Find it at alliancelaundry.com/fire.
From the front lines to the firehouse, heroes deserve real comfort. Firehousefurniture.com designs seating built tough for firefighters by people who understand the job. Honor your crew. Shop firehousefurniture.com.
Welcome to Mental Health Monthly with Dan DeGryse and Chris Mussel.
Well, welcome to the show. My name's Dan DeGryse, and my co-host is none other than
Chris Mussel.
All right, from McKinney, Texas. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got a topic today that, as we're going to talk about it today, we missed it in September, but I think in talking with Chris, and I just read an article by Stephanie White, I think I'm going to go with it, is that we should be talking about this each month. So Chris and I are going to talk about this today. And I think that others that are doing podcasts should not just take September as Suicide Awareness Month, but we should take every month. How about that, right? Suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Let's do it. We're not going to do it each month. We talk about mental health monthly, and that's what our show is. But if everybody did this on a monthly basis, we would get more education out there. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think if there's enough of us that if somebody's hitting it monthly, right, just like everything else we do, you got to train and maintain, right? Something that's unfortunately never going away. So
let's challenge everybody else that's out there with Firefighter Nation and Fire Engineering and the webcasts and webinars and podcasts. Pick a month and let's do this year round. We'll keep up with our mental health monthly, and we're going to talk about suicide awareness. We're going to talk about the way I look at it as prevention, intervention, and postvention, three-prong approach. And just to give some people some insight, Chris knows this story, is if you'd asked me, let's see, going back to 2007, how long ago was that? That's a long time ago. 18 years. If you had asked me about suicide, and even though I've been a clinician since 1986, and a certified addictions counselor since 91, long time, I really didn't know a lot about suicide. I could tell you this, is that it unfortunately, it was in my family. My dad, God rest his soul, he didn't die by suicide, but he had, let's call it suicidality, right? He was on the continuum, the spectrum, the continuum line with thoughts for the better part of 50 years, a long time. We really didn't talk about it in the family. I really didn't get educated much. We knew when he was suicidal, but really my education, so that was personal, but I really didn't educate myself. We kind of saw it in his behavior, but I really didn't research it. It wasn't until my former department, Chicago, experienced 7 suicides in 18 months, and then another 4 and 5 months back in 2008, 2009, that me and my team were like, hey, what's going on? And is this just an influx? Is this an anomaly, or has this been going on for a long time? Obviously, we know suicide dates back millenniums. I mean, a long, long time in whole history, and we may touch on that. But the point is that I started to look into suicide awareness or suicide prevention. You really went to a suicide prevention class, and we did some research, and we looked at the incident rate in the Chicago Fire Department, and you look at the CDC incident rate. But I always walked away from any training that I took after we did our research in Chicago, frustrated because they would always just talk about the same signs and symptoms. And hopefully everybody will follow me on this, because I think, well, there's risk factors and warning signs, and risk factors are things you really technically can't change, and warning signs are things that are showing you that that person has the potential at that time to die by suicide. And on another note, you'll notice myself and Chris deliberately say die by suicide or died by suicide, or suicidality, or a continuum of suicide. While it's not a diagnosis right now, it falls in a lot of diagnosis as a characteristic, and we want to eliminate, if we want to eliminate the stigma and continue to talk about it without the historical barriers behind it, and the beliefs and the shame and so forth around it, we have to be able to use the right verbiage and words and take the word committed out of it. All right, so I'm kind of talking about a couple of different things, but there's a lot of history and a lot of things associated with just the word suicide. And even us, when Chris and I were like, okay, what are we going to talk about today? Obviously our show is about mental health, and he had a topic today that was really about behavioral health in the academy. And I think you wrote an article, right? That was out in Firefighter Nation already, mm-hmm. Which was very good. And not to discount that, but that is key, right? So when we talk about prevention, we're not talking about intervention or at the time of the critical event. We're talking about how do we get in front of this?
Right.
And so in your article, did you address suicide?
Yeah.
You did?
Things that, so measures that you can put in place to hopefully prevent, because like you said, we have to listen. If when somebody's in a crisis, if that's the first time we're right, picking up the phone or trying to figure out what to do or looking up the manual, like we're in a bad spot, right? And it's interesting. You can look it up. They say the average civilian might experience a traumatic event in a lifetime, right? Worst case scenario, 3 to 4 traumatic events. And this prevention, you do that in a week, right?
Yeah, right.
And so to your point, like you have to be out in front of it. You recently wrote an article.
I did.
That you shared with me.
I did. It's not published yet, but
maybe we could little sneak peek of it.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Talk about a little bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind it, right, is what did so I titled it Break the Silence. And again, going back to the original introduction, is let's not just wait until the event happens. Let's not wait for September to happen. Let's not wait to the perfect time to have a conversation about it. Let's make it part of the dialogue. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from a negativity standpoint, because today we're going to also talk about a lot of the protective factors that we have individually and we have in the fire service. But go ahead.
Yeah, we'll get into the article, right? But I think that what you're saying, like, when are we going to talk about it, right? Like, when is it going to be normal at the kitchen table? When is it going to be normal post-incident, right? Hey, and listen, if there's like guys out there, gals out there that are doing it already, great, right? But and I'm going to say this, it's sometimes disheartening when we say we talk about it, we're going to do it, but the numbers aren't changing. Take it from the military. 22 a day. How long have we been talking about that number? Right. And so going back to the beginning of the show, we obviously need to be talking about it more. We need to be doing things.
Yeah. And I think that number is probably even larger. So,
right.
And case in point, again, everything that I say is in gospel, even though I like to think it is. All I got to do is ask my wife, and we know it's not true. But having done research, right? Liars figure, figures lie. You could look at different places. 6,000 veterans die a year. And if you do the math on that, I can't do the math. 365 days.
Yeah.
That's somewhere around that. The VA talks about 17 to 18 now a day. But here's the thing. I just read an article in regards to overdoses, right? So we used to have 40,000 overdoses or so a year. In 2022, 23, I think we went over 100,000. I think last year we dipped below. But here's the thing, and I have it. I looked it up. So how many overdoses do you think were a person's attempt to die by suicide? Right, and I don't have the answer to that. And here's the thing, right? Because we only have certain data. And so the classification of an overdose as a suicide is determined by a medical examiner or coroners through a comprehensive investigation of a person's intent. If that person, right, I guess you could look at, I forget what they call that when they look at information and that there's a certain type of forensic, not that toxicology, but investigation, so forth, but autopsy, right? Well, most overdoses are categorized as accidental. So most of them, a suicide ruling requires clear evidence that the individual intentionally ingested a substance to cause their own death. In a case where intent cannot be definitively proven, and I'm assuming, right, unless they told somebody or have a suicide note, the majority of them, and a lot of them, unfortunately, homeless or runaways and so forth, that unfortunately include the veteran population, go unclassified. So I have some friends with the American Legion. They think it's the number's 40, a day, or 44. Right. One's the cliche, right? One's bad enough that affects so many, 17, 22, 40 a day, terrible. But the numbers, right, like you said, are not going down, they're going up.
Right.
So from a training and education and a prevention, and I've only learned I know prevention and intervention. I've only learned about postvention in the last probably 5 years, but the average person really probably doesn't understand the difference between those three segments and how important it is to have all three of those and not just when the incident happens.
Listen, it's gotta be just as important as everything else we do. It has to be, right? And the prevention is the pillar of it, right?
Yeah, and to your article, right? The start in the academy.
Right. And listen, I know it's a mental health podcast, but we train on everything else. You're not going to put 4 guys on a rig and they've never been to a house fire before, and you say, okay, there's a house fire, go figure it out. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Right.
Right. And so if we're not talking about suicide, if we're not creating an environment, if we're not making sure the tools and resources are there, guess what? it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. And again, the prevention. So the training aspect of what would constitute preventative measures. And part of me wants to say we could take out the word suicide, but then I'm kind of falling into that whole fear biased stigma aspect of it. But it can be a combination of, as you mentioned, the exposure that first responders have and people in general because of all the chaos in the world. What are good preventative measures? What are the protective factors that people have and that we can build upon to outweigh the risk factors and stay away from that person if they do have thoughts? Because not everybody that has a thought of suicide is going to have a plan, start to carry that plan out, or attempt it.
Right.
So how do we stay in front of it? And I know you took some notes off my my article, so what do you got for me?
Yeah. So, well, one thing that you talk about in your article, and we'll break it down, is departments can develop and execute action plans regarding their mental wellness that include suicidality recognition, intervention as a priority. Before you go into that kind of stood out to me because you know what that tells me? This just isn't on the individual. This isn't just on the company officer. This just isn't on the senior man. This is, and we've talked about this before. There's a 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter, 2-part strategic approach here. You have the individual element to it, but then you have the department responsibility. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history behind it, it was favorable way back in the Roman days, where Romans died by suicide, and there was assisted suicide, and then it was unfavorable, and the stigma then was created as a sin, right? And couldn't be buried in the consecrated grounds. And, they used to behead the people that died by suicide and perch those up in front of the towns and then ostracize the family. So it's not just affected the individual, it affected the family and it affected the community and around. And then you go into, years later, Dr. Durkheim wrote Lay Suicide and talked about the influence on individuals choosing to die by suicide based on their social interaction. I don't really talk about bullying a lot, but I mean, that plays a factor in it. And we all have heard stuff about, now, not just on the phone or notes, but on social media and all the different things of what hateful things people will say. So yeah, I mean, it's coming from all different angles. Right. So they're really, how do you protect an individual from that exposure, and how do you build up the interpersonal skills? If 1 in 5 people currently are identified as somebody that has a diagnosable mental health condition, and we have 40 million Americans that are struggling with substance use, and many of those are in the highest incident rate increase are kids aged 10 to 14, increased, right. I think it was last year, the year before, 300%. what are we doing collectively as a community, as a family network? They take the fire service away from it, right? Even though we know good, bad, and the ugly happens in the fire service. We could get that in a second, but our own family network, as I said to you, in my own family, we knew my father was suicidal, but we didn't talk about it. So we weren't educated on it. And all we knew was fear-based because of what we heard, and we were afraid to talk about it. So we didn't get any education. So we didn't move the needle at all. All we knew to do was intervene when he said he was going to kill himself, which was 3 times. We didn't know what to do in between there.
And I was going to ask you, and you already answered it. You said the afraid part, but you said you didn't talk about it. And I was going to ask why, right? And I think I probably know the answer, right? You don't know how to handle it, right? Not educated about it. The fear of retaliation or how he's going to respond to that, right? That's tough. And if you think about it, there's just so many ways we could go with this conversation. If that's hard to do in our own family unit on the home front, man, how hard is that to do on the work front, right?
Yeah. No, and all those things you just said were barriers to us and our family being able to talk about it and be proactive.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, is the 3rd time that he was suicidal, and he wrote a note, and luckily in the article we put that 70% of people who have decided to die by suicide do that within an hour of deciding. An hour. And 40%, I think, do it within 20 minutes. And I think it was like, I don't know if I'm probably not quoting myself really well. 15 to 20% do it within like 5 minutes. So there should be no hesitation. And so I remember when I asked my dad the 3rd time, and after we had gotten him to safety, and we had removed his means, which was the handguns, I thought to myself, why, if I'd been in behavioral health at that time, in the mental health field and substance use world for 30 something years, why didn't I know to have the conversation with him before that? Why was it always afterwards? So I'm taking responsibility myself. I'm not here to accuse anybody, but me and you are trying to be advocates for the dialogue and the education, because another one of the fears was that if we brought it up to him, we were going to put that thought in his head. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Some of those numbers you were talking about in one of the studies, half of the participants attempted within 10 minutes, it says attempted, died by suicide within 10 minutes of deciding to die. 71% veterans within an hour. That's like, it's all shocking, but that's like super shocking. And I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and part of this education and talking about it and us being better for our own is you're the one getting the phone call. You're the guy that's the friend, the coworker, the guy that works at the station across town, relieves them at shift, whatever the situation. It's not often, in my opinion, that they're calling the counselor directly, right? The ones that are reaching out. And so education, right? Your education, where I was going with that is your education has to be department wide. It can't just be for the peer support team. It can't just be for the chief officers. It can't just be for the company officer. It's got to be right. And it goes back to starting in the academy. Somebody that was in the military. I've taken way more of these phone calls, so many phone calls before I was ever on a peer support team, before I ever had official training, right? Because they're calling who they're comfortable with. And so that training has to be.
Yeah, and let's take the fire service out of it. Let's take the military out of it. And again, we know the numbers are significant. Let's go back to the numbers of adolescents, 10 to 14. And everybody here that's listening or knows somebody that has a child, when have they ever had a conversation about, hey, what's your thoughts about this? And had a dialogue about it so that they do not become that parent of that 10 to 14-year-old who takes their life and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. Right. So while we're firefighters, EMS, and we're exposed to a lot of different things, we're also very capable. But then, and we gosh, do we protect? You know, I'm going to make a joke because we have to, and people might think it's not funny, but everybody's a helicopter parent now, right? To put a bubble wrap around their kids and protect them, but we have to let them be. So they could become resilient through their life, just like we have, and all of the people that are listening. But
yeah,
when my mom kept it from us, she didn't talk to us about it. She wanted to protect us, but that wasn't protecting us because we didn't get prepared for the next time that my dad attempted suicide.
Yeah.
Protecting is engaging and having a dialogue and talking about it. And again, our firehouse family and our own family, and a lot of times they intertwine, and our network gets bigger. We have to better understand the risk factors, the warning signs, the protective factors, and breaking the silence. And then, like you said, the time to learn how to intervene is not the time when that person says, yeah, mom or dad, I've had thoughts of suicide. I would hope that if and when you do ask that question, you get some further training before that to understand the suicide continuum, and it's long. Many people will have suicidal thoughts, but never, ever have a plan. And even people that have a plan have never carried out that plan. And those people that have carried out those plans and attempted it are 100% more likely to attempt it within a year following than somebody who has not gotten to that point. The good side of this is that if we could break the stigma, 90% of those people, or maybe more, that have attempted suicide, even though that's, in my opinion, the number one risk factor, will not go on to attempt suicide in their lifetime again, or die by suicide.
Yeah.
So there's significant positivity, but we have to better understand this behavior.
Here's the other thing too. If you're listening and you're like, well, I'm not going to be on the peer support team, or that's mental health's not my jam, which is, respect that, right? It's definitely not for everyone. Here's the thing. When you go back to the adolescence and what you're saying, and you get some education on it, if nothing else, you have it for your own family. You have the knowledge, right? Like, if nothing else, if you're like, why do I need this training? And you just have to find something to tell yourself to force you to do it for your own family, right? Because it happens, right? I have
happens too often.
I have two boys, you know that. 12 and 15, right? In that range, that 10 to 14, 10 to 15. I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with them about it. I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with them about mental health. Of course, when they're having a bad day, I'm there for them, or when they're mad about whatever. So it's really interesting and it's eye-opening as somebody that's sitting here co-hosting a podcast on it, right? I
appreciate you saying that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I will tell you, my son texts me, and let me just find this for you. He texts me quite a bit, as you can tell.
No, and I know that. And again, even though you haven't had that conversation with him, I know that if that ever would happen, he would not hesitate, not to necessarily text you, but to engage you.
100%.
You've already set the stage for that 100%. To happen. Yeah.
Yeah. But you talk about adolescents and what they deal with today, right? And he texted me, I was at work. He said, Charlie Kirk died. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I said, so sad. And he said, can't have a formal debate without threats shooting. And I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but the fact that he's 15 years old.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you think about, because somebody might say, well, why is the risk so high for adolescents? Well, what are they exposed to? Right. And so, yeah, the training has to be there. And I think that we do a good job of the formalized training. And when I say formalized training, meaning the SISM, the diffusing, the debriefing, the EAP, call this number, here's our dedicated person, counselor, whatever. But I think where we have to be better is it's the guy that's going to call his buddy at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday night. And he's not peer trained, SISM trained. That's the guy, right? And I go back on this for a second, and I learned this from you. I've said this before. We've talked about it, and I've talked about it in some presentations I've done. But when I think somebody's not doing well, or they had a bad run, or they're not having a great day, I don't say, "Hey man, you good?" Why? What are they going to say? Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
You don't do that. Obviously, I had a very big incident in my department I was part of, and I remember talking to you, right? We've talked about it. You said, how are you? How you doing? You left it open-ended. I think that people don't know how to have those conversations, because if they did, they wouldn't say, "Hey man, you good?" A lot of people, in my opinion, will say, "Are you good?" because they're expecting that natural, "Yeah, I'm good," versus, "No, man, I'm not." Oh, well, hold on a second. Time out. That wasn't supposed to be how you answered that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not knocking them for it, but that just tells me we have to do better about providing the education, the tools, the resources. And this has to be annual. Like if mental health awareness, of suicide prevention awareness, post, whatever you want to call it, is not part of your annual training plan, like in 2025, I'm sorry, but you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, well, let me just say, and even though I've been in this field a long time and been around the fire service 30 years, and we've known each other for 6 or so, those words don't come out of my mouth. I would say often. They come out of my mouth, but they don't come out often unless there's reason, in a sense. But people do know, just like your son knows, that he can reach out to you and you'll be there for them. I don't know if we have that piece completely as we did in the fire service, in the MS world 20 years ago. That was mainly for fixing houses and doing roofs and plumbing and digging a hole and so forth, which, thanks, by the way, I dug my French drain and I know you're in Texas, but geez, maybe you could have helped. I mean, I'm 61 years old. I dug like 40 feet. Anyhow, I digress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll digress. So that brings up a question. I'm going to ask you this one. Maybe it's a hard question. Maybe actually, I hope it's hard since you just gave me a hard time. We talk a lot about doing the education on the guy makes the phone call or whatever the situation is, sends a text message. How do you handle you're picking up on somebody, right? You work in the firehouse a third of your life with these guys. You know them next to your own family. You know them better than they know you better than anyone else in their world. And you notice that Dan's off. And you know what? Dan's been off for a couple of days. Not off shift, but he's just not Dan. Right? How do you handle that? Do you approach him or do you just say, well, Dan?
So many different ways. I could tell you that my buddy Freddie died by suicide and I had no idea. I have a buddy whose wife died of cancer, or a couple buddies, and I would check on him. We have a mutual friend whose husband passed away, and I text her. And I said, hey, listen, you want me to stop? Tell me to stop. In the meantime, I'm just going to send a text, but no, as with anybody I've ever talked with, I'll be available. Nowadays at 61, my phone goes off at 9 o'clock, 9:30, and I turn it on when I get up in the morning because I'm, not with the department. I'm not in a designated peer support, 24-hour a day thing, but I'll get that message and call in the morning. There have been many people that I've worked with that in 30 years never asked that question. And then there are some that because of that, I would ask, is there anything I could do? On the flip side of that, kind of like you did have done with your son, and I think you've done in the two departments you've been in, and hopefully other people that are listening has created that persona that you're available, so that people are unafraid to call. And then I had one friend, and I'm not going to tell you about my whole history, but I remember one called at dinner time. And this person would call occasionally, but he would be respectful of mealtime. So at the time I didn't pick up on it. I just said, hey, can I call you later? Hung up, looked at my wife, had a second thought, and I'm like, he wouldn't call at this particular time. Maybe it's like right now, and you look at those statistics, right? 71% of those people that have had the thought, I don't want to go to bed tonight going, damn, I didn't respond right away. So I called him right back and I said, hey, I'm going to ask you. And he goes, Dan, I'm not suicidal, because he knows me. He goes, finish your dinner and just give me a call. So he even knew before I was going to ask him. So most people know that I'm not afraid to ask those questions. And he was not offended at all, but he answered it for me.
I mean, how great though. Like how you're like, okay, cool. I'll finish supper.
But that didn't happen overnight. I mean, that happened over, me doing this for 15, 20 years. And not that people have to wait, it takes that long to develop it, but it takes a while. To your question, I have no problem asking, and I'd hope that people would have no problem asking me. But a lot of people that have called me, I always will ask them, how many times did you pick up the phone before you actually called? Just to get an idea of what they're struggling with and how long it took them to actually reach out.
Yeah. And I think, to to your point, it didn't happen overnight. You becoming that way. As much as you can attend the trainings and get the certificates and do all that, a lot of it's a part of like who you are as a person, right? So you can start, like anybody listening, you can start right there today. Who you are as a person.
Oh yeah, all those things don't mean anything to anybody else.
Right.
They develop who I am and who you are, because I know you got some yourself.
And to your point, I've stepped away from dinner at phone calls. I've gotten out of bed at 2:00 in the morning. I've gotten on a airplane, right? And but you know what? If that's what works, happy to do it.
And it's not for everybody, you know that.
No,
The whole behavioral health thing still is there's beliefs and fears and misinformation. People, I went golfing the other day and a guy asked me, he goes, how do you do it? And I go, I have good support and I have outlets. You don't do it. Speaking of outlets and good support, I don't know if I showed you. How about that?
Look at
Talk about training. Fools International, all you fools out there, right? Fraternal Order of Leatherhead Society. If you're not familiar with them, talking about training, it's not just axes and brimstones. They do, or at least the international, from their president on down and their executive board, do talk and train about behavioral health. So
how great are those guys? Awesome, right?
The best.
So good. The president and their board and just what they do, and like that's what we need. That's what the fire service needs, right? Like Fools, very respected organization, very respected leaders, a lot of respected chapters, right? And I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. Like you need certain people saying mental health is cool for people to believe it's cool. I'm not, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm just going to say it. I got to say it. Right. And so when you get, and they believe it, obviously, but when you get different folks and different organizations behind it, making a push, right. And obviously what Chief Rhodes and Stephanie are doing with, fire engineering and Firefighter Nation. Right.
I met, even though Richie Stack was in Chicago, I didn't know him. He was the president at the time when I reached out to him. Ben Flegel is now my co-host in Hump Day Hangout. Rob Fisher, he's been a board member for many years. There's several other ones that, not going to name everybody, but Southside Fools that I'm a part of. 10 years ago, Rich Dory, seasoned veteran battalion chief in Chicago, went and talked about behavioral health. And then I came in and they have a discussion about it. They discuss not only line of duty deaths, but also suicides in their monthly meeting. It's hopefully from the conversation and the dialogue and the normalization of mental health, it's an easier discussion at those meetings, specifically to Southside Fools. Hopefully all the Fools chapters can do. This is not a thing just for them, but we talk about community firehouses, organizations, your own household, no matter what organization, and the Fools being one of them, is we have to normalize, break the silence, have the conversation, and protect our brothers and sisters. The question is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, we have to. That's a non-negotiable. I think something else, right, is we talk about the prevention, the intervention, the postvention, and obviously there's the postvention of the success story, but the person that did die by suicide, right? Mm-hmm. Are we breaking that down? Are we doing, after actions on that? Are we studying it? Are we researching it? And I'm not talking about the yes, we have the big studies and the numbers by the day and age range, all that. I'm talking about the individual. In my organization, this guy, what did we see? What was the trends? What were the patterns? Right? And then what's the plan that we're doing to change it, to fix it?
Well, for the most part, most organizations do not break down
Right.
the NIOSH reports from a line of duty death, and even from an injury aspect. So how the mental health aspect and the suicide thing is even further removed. So we have to do the low-hanging fruit first, from the simple hot washes and discussing not necessarily what went wrong, but what went right. If you're a leader, pat that person on the back. I mean, slam their hand in the desk drawer too. You know, I'm jesting with that. We naturally have no problem picking apart the next person. From a mental health standpoint, from a suicide prevention standpoint, from a leadership and a training standpoint, when you do your hot wash, don't be afraid to say, hey, nice job. And then you don't necessarily have to pick out, hey, why did it take you so long to lead out? Simply pose it as, explain to me your lead out, or explain to me your roof operations. Right? Because most of the time people will say, what took you so long to chop that freaking hole in a roof? And there could have been 18 different things from, if you put me behind a rig today with all the safeties, I probably couldn't get that main up. I know how to override the ones a while back.
He said a while. You mean a while?
20 years. There are no safeties on the old C grades, man. You take the levers, right? You one, two, put them both down, man, and you're done. That's
not
it.
Anymore. Times have changed.
I don't think we ever took out the plates, that you're supposed to put. Never took out those plates, only to check them, make sure that they're still there. Anyhow, I digress again.
Listen, though, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, like who you are as a person. We've talked about this with, gosh, who did we have on recently? Chief DeYer, right? Chief DeYer, we had him on.
Yeah.
Retired Dallas. Who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, right? I've said it. You could work at the busiest house in the city, go to multiple jobs a day, and absolutely be miserable. You could work at the slowest house in the city, slowest apartment in the area, whatever, and absolutely be beaming and loving life. And so I think that's important for people here, is that yes, the formalized training is important. Absolutely. The funding from the department, the plans from the department, the formalized training with the people that have the degrees and the license in it. But it doesn't, there are things you can do right now and implement.
Let's talk about the protective factors. All right. Well, again, when we talk about suicide, there's historical stigma and beliefs, fear-based, all that stuff. I'm not going to talk about the numbers, because I believe the numbers would be significantly higher if we didn't have 100%. The protective factors that you institute in your own home. I try to do as well in my own home and in my battalion when I was in Chicago. What? Tell me you already know them, and I'm not testing you, but I could easily share them, but I've been talking a lot. What are the protective factors in the fire service and EMS world right now?
We got boundaries, right? Well, Share what you're thinking. Make sure I'm with
All right,
you.
I'm putting you on the spot. So number one, we're solution oriented,
Oh,
right? From a protective factor is that we don't look for problems. When we don't have something to do, we look for problems and and then we mess with people. But we're solution focused because that's why we're in the friggin' fire service, because we want to fix things and put out fires and vehicle extrication and save lives and all that stuff. So we're solution oriented. We're not. I'm trying to say a nice word. We're not isolative people. We want to be with a team.
right.
We're team focused.
Problem solvers, team engaged. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of us come from that sports world. And I wasn't a wrestler, but again, wrestling had a team, but a lot of those people were individuals. I'm just jesting. I don't want anybody putting me in a headlock. All came from team sports. We enjoyed being with a group, not sitting in a little incubator by ourselves. So we had that camaraderie that extended into our personal life and beyond our professional life. So those are two things. Did I spur your thought?
No, you didn't.
Man, come on, dude.
On the spot.
So protective factors, right? We're skilled individuals. And if we don't know something, we usually try to find it out. So again, problem solvers, but we also and fixers, but we're looking for solutions.
Sense of purpose.
100% sense of purpose.
Right.
Internally driven. Right. Whether it be from training, promotion.
Right. Detail oriented.
Moving to the next level.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Internally driven and then externally as well to make the team and the department better.
Right.
So again, and I could go on in a sense of the protective factors, the humor,
the camaraderie, the difference of calls. Not going to
the flexibility of our mind, of our ability to adjust to any and all emergencies, right? So when you think about, if I have everybody pause for a second, you think about somebody that is suicidal, and you have all that skill set, that offsets the sleep, the trauma, and again, not exactly, but it help offsets that. So if we lose that camaraderie, that sense of purpose, that problem solving, that leadership, that brotherhood, that sisterhood, the humor, now all of a sudden the tables, right? The teeter-totter gets pushed on the wrong end. Life stress, injury, illness, trauma, sleepless nights. So point is, from after action reviews to line of duty deaths to suicides, we have to look at the favorable things to keep the tribe together, not just at the bad stuff. So the next time you do an after action review, start off with 5 positives. No matter how hard it is for you to say that, start off with 5 positives, and then ask. You don't have to say it as a leader, as an officer. What could we have done better?
You just took the words right out of my mouth. What went right? Like what went well? What maybe didn't go so well? Or, hey, what would you do differently next time?
Mm-hmm.
And you would be surprised. Versus you're just, like you said, passive aggressive or degrading, or right. You get to you get to set the stage. You get to set the environment.
Set
for
the
that.
tone. Right.
And, you know, we sometimes people just need you said lead off with what went well. Sometimes that's all people need for the day. They just need a little win. Right? Hey, good job. Right? Hey, you guys, whatever. So, it's not hard, but it just makes my brain sometimes like, it baffles me like why the numbers aren't changing. Right. And the numbers are, listen, they're misreported, right? You said it earlier, like most of the suicides are ruled accidental because they have to have a letter or intent, or they have to prove.
You said suicides, overdoses.
I'm sorry, overdoses, right? And so accidental, and then, you know, even with the military guys and the numbers aren't true. And I wish there was a better way to report them. But the reality of it is the fact that even if they're just maintaining where they are, that's enough for us to say we need to be doing better. And it takes from the rookie, we have a rookie class starting Monday. From those guys starting Monday morning, first day, to the guy that's retiring in 3 weeks, everyone in between.
Hey, personally, I have to say, so my son is starting full time with Palatine Fire in the suburbs here in Illinois on Thursday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We was part-time with Algonquin Lake and Hills, tested. And so as you just said, it'll be interesting to see what his education is in his first, 6 months.
Yeah. Good for him. That'd be awesome.
Yep. Right. So let's get personal.
Okay.
Not that we haven't been personal yet. So for anybody who's still with us, right? Hopefully there are. Chris and I talked a little bit before the show, and I said, I don't think I've ever asked you if you ever thought about suicide or anything like that. And he said, no. And so your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah. It's like I shared with you before the show. Considered it? No. When I was at some pretty dark times in my life, like what if, right? For sure. What if I wasn't here? What if I wasn't around? Right? Had a plan? No. Actually considered it? No. Maybe used it as a cry for attention. I don't know. But what brought me back to reality was my children. Right. And so, yeah, to me, the what if is just as bad as the thought of it. I mean, it's not like, oh, well, you only thought what if, you didn't consider it, so it's less as serious.
Yeah, I guess so. I appreciate you offering this again. In here, if me and you cannot be open, honest, and vulnerable, then how do we expect other people to do that? Right? We know that.
What are we doing? Right.
We have many conversations outside of this podcast that hopefully it's not awkward here then when we're having these conversations. So, but with you, and I've had other people say that, said, no, I haven't had the intent or the thoughts of suicide, but I'm like, what if I wasn't here? I guess if you would think about in the sense of what you're taking away from the family, yeah, I could see that. But there's a whole line of suicidality, and we don't have time to go in depth on that. But I can tell you this, is that when I started to look into suicide, I was like, suicide is suicide is suicide. But there is a continuum, just like with, depression, there's dysthymia, which is low grade depressive And there's even seasonal depression. And then there's depression. And then there's people like 3% of those have major depression. So maybe, again, not to get too deep in the woods or in the weeds, is that there is a continuum on that suicidality. So we got to start somewhere to have that conversation so we can reduce suicide, line of duty deaths, mental health issues, build up camaraderie and so forth by breaking the silence and having a dialogue. Not just me and Chris. And let's put it this way too, going forward. If any of you want to come on the show to have a conversation about this, we'd love to have you. Reach 100%. Out to, I don't know if you reach out to me or Chris, you could find us somewhere. From a proactive standpoint, not just telling a story, but from a proactive standpoint, we'd plan something 6 months down the road. Because like we said, hopefully not just us are the only ones talking about this, and not just in the month of September, but every month from a proactive standpoint.
Yeah, we would love to have people. Listen, me and you, if we're not open, honest, vulnerable, like you said, what are we doing with this show? And then having those success stories. But, and I've never thought about it this way, but, the what if leads to the thought, leads to the plan, so it's definitely eye-opening. For you, same question.
Got to ask me.
Have you ever had thoughts of suicide?
No, I have not. And I don't say that proudly, and I don't say that sheepishly, and I don't say that in any other way than the fact that I have not had those thoughts. Along those lines, again, I'm the son of a father who had bipolar disorder, was suicidal for 50 years, and was an active alcoholic for 35 years. I don't say that to make him any less. I look at him as a very strong, dedicated person to survive that.
100%.
And I don't look at him as any less. He had to do some things, and we won't get into that piece of it. But as a son of an alcoholic, I have a 4-time greater chance of becoming one. We don't know if it's a combination of genetics or conditioning or both, of what will lead somebody to become an alcoholic. We can't take a blood test to identify that. Bipolar disorder, right? Depression can run in generations and families. And while I'm 61 and have not had thoughts of suicide, like my wife had asked me years ago, are you afraid that you might become an alcoholic? And I said, no. I don't have many fears, but I don't spend my time thinking about that. I am conscious daily of where I'm at, whereas before I did not. Because when you look at the stats and the statistics, they significantly increase the older you get. From
right,
to doubling. To the highest incident rate is those people, Caucasian males. I think it's 75 and older. I'm not there yet. May look like that, but I did get a haircut today.
I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I got a little bit left. Wait 30 years.
Yeah. And listen, I'll say it. I know we're running out of time. I'll say it. I think these are this is breaking the stigma. This is breaking the silence. These are conversations, right? you know, I would challenge people listening, like family, friends, your crew, have these conversations. Like, just go to your firehouse next shift and be like, hey, let's talk about mental health for a minute. Like, you guys ever, you don't have to say, have you ever thought of suicide? But you guys struggled with anything? Anything that you like, yeah, you never know. Maybe you'll learn a tool that somebody else has, right? I was talking to a person recently, and he was telling me a story, and he was saying, man, when I became public about this certain thing I was dealing with, he said it was pretty neat to see the amount of other people, right, that were dealing with that. I've seen that with my own journey with sobriety, right? The amount of people that, you don't drink, I don't drink. Oh, I don't drink either, right? Like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, break the silence, have the conversation, and you might be surprised in a good way what it leads to.
Oh, yeah, I'll say that when we had those 11 suicides in 2.5 years, I told my team that we had to go to every firehouse and every shift, 97 firehouses. So we basically had 300 visits to make. It took us, with all the runs that happened in our shifts, about 2.5 years to make every shift. I don't even know if we got everybody, because details and people off duty or furloughs, but we were committed 100% of the time, every single time. Anybody that's ever done this in his own department knows this as well, is when we left that firehouse, whether we were there for 10 minutes or 2 hours, somebody always walked us out to the car, and at the very end asked us something personal.
Yep.
At the beginning, it was like who's following us?
Right.
And then we were like, every single time we came back to our unit and discussed stuff, it was like, oh yeah, well, what was the last conversation? And it was tremendous. Like, hey, do you help kids? Do you help? I got a spouse, or hey, I'm struggling with finances right now, or I'm going through chapters, all that stuff. But you start the conversation from your end.
That's it.
And offer something, people will be 1,000% more willing to divulge from their end.
Yeah.
Right?
So good.
All right, man.
I think we're out of time.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Mental Health Monthly at Firefighter Nation.
Remove carcinogens and get your gear compliant clean with Unimac laundry equipment. Find it at alliancelaundry.com/fire.
From the front lines to the firehouse, heroes deserve real comfort. Firehousefurniture.com designs seating built tough for firefighters by people who understand the job. Honor your crew. Shop firehousefurniture.com.
Welcome to Mental Health Monthly with Dan DeGryse and Chris Muscle.